Check it out, guys. I got me a brand new rig for this. This bad boy can open up PowerPoint so fast. Check it out. Hello, nuts and nerds, and welcome back to A Squirrel Plays. Today we're going to be talking about Tales from Elsewhere. The game, that is, not the channel, though I suppose we might do a little bit of that too. Man, imagine naming your YouTube channel after your game. Who does that? Anyhoozle, I feel like it's been a hot minute since I've done a game review here, and I actually have a few in the oven I need to get to, including the likes of Rogue Octopus and Indominant. But today, we're going to the Wild West of Tales from Elsewhere, so what do we have in store? First things first, you gotta have the right hat. Now, part 1 will be about the author, the book, and the setting. Part 2 will be the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, also known as a look at the mechanics. And then part 3 will be about the experience I had playing it and some overall thoughts. But first, a couple of things before we get into this. 1, the video was timed to be as close as I could possibly get to the Kickstarter for this game. That goes live in just a few short days, so make sure you're signed up for the notification on that. Link down in the description. And of course, go support the Kickstarter once it does go live if you're in a financial position to do so. Old Peter has invested an awful lot into this project, and I want to see it succeed. Second, speaking of investing, this video and review are in no way, shape, or form paid for. I know there was a lot of hubbub when Shadow Dark started getting big and people suspecting some foul play, and considering the rate of Peter's growth on YouTube, I wouldn't be surprised if he started facing some similar accusations depending on how the Kickstarter goes. But as far as my review goes, no money has changed hands, so I'm allowed to badmouth it all I want. That said, Peter, if you want to throw some money my way, I can make this review a whole lot Alright, so I feel like this part of the video is kind of pointless because I know an awful lot of you that watch my videos also watch Peter's videos, so most of you already know a lot about him. But for those of you who don't, whether it's because you're new or just don't follow his videos, allow me to introduce you to Peter. He runs the channel Tales from Elsewhere and makes videos about TTRPG design philosophies, which gives you a very good inside look on why he made a lot of the choices he did in his own game, as well as some stuff to think about for your own game design. Now, having had the pleasure of chatting with Peter behind the scenes, working with him on a couple projects, and even just getting to hang out in person at Gen Con for a few days, I can tell you, he's a pretty cool dude. And I really hope that doesn't come back to bite me because you just never know. I already have a sneaky suspicion that he's just using me to collect Southern idioms for his game. Matter of fact, when we were playing a session of this game just a couple weeks ago, he learned to tell somebody that they're about 2 beans short a batch of cornbread. We also learned in that session that cornbread doesn't make a very good suppressor for your revolver, but that's another story for another time. Now, more seriously, there is something I'd like to highlight here. For a lot of you, myself included, it probably feels like Peter just came out of nowhere and started kicking ass and taking names, right? He came right out of the gate with well-edited videos, kicked the algorithm in the teeth, and started growing like a weed, and just had a brand spanking new TTRPG system hot and ready to go. And here you are, struggling to figure out just how a single mechanic in your own game works. Can kind of get a guy down, can it? Well, here's the thing. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes work before that channel ever dropped its first video. If I'm not mistaken, Peter has been toying around with the system for about 10 years or so by the time he started his YouTube channel. He also has a team that includes a professional video editor and, yes, somebody who is a professional game designer and writer for a living. Now, does that mean he's getting a free ride? Well, of course not. He's still doing what we call a metric poop ton of work himself. My point is, a ton of construction and planning had already been done before the rest of us ever saw him. So don't feel like you're falling behind and failing because Peter is zooming past the rest of us. Brother Peter got dealt a really good hand in life and is doing everything he can to make the most of it instead of letting it go to waste, which means the rest of us get a quality game. Besides, you know what Peter doesn't have despite all that prep work and good fortune? They ain't got me, baby. Back from the dead. Like and subscribe. Oh, wow, dadgummit, you dang squirrel, you done gave me the rabies. All right, so let's have a quick look at the book itself. Technically, it's still in development, but what we see here is what they're shooting for. While I'm not a fan of double-column game manuals when there's a bunch of information like this, I can still admit and say this looks pretty dang good. Especially on pages like this. I mean, come on, that's some good stuff right there. Now, there's really not a whole lot I can say here. It's pretty standard stuff, but it's also very well done standard stuff, if that makes any sense at all. Anybody can make a 2-column game manual, right? But not everyone can make it look this decent. And if I remember right, Peter mentioned that the person doing this work in his manual specializes in accessibility, so technically this should be easy for everyone to read, right? As for the art, I think it is also very well done. So much so that it may even be a detriment to itself. While the art pieces are super cool looking, some of the colored images are just so dang detailed and well done that they don't look like they belong in a book for a gritty Wild West setting. Whereas these black and white sketches I feel like fit the bill perfectly. But that's just me and honestly changes absolutely nothing because I know some of you are going to feel the opposite and that's okay. Art is just fun that way. As for the setting, Tales from Elsewhere takes place in Clockworld out in the Wild West. A mysterious apocalyptic event known as the Calamity brought the world to an end at the end of the 19th century and tore the barrier between realities. Nobody really knows what happened, but there's remnants of what was there before. They had reached the peak of civilization, says Lady Jane, and I guess that's how she sounds now. Complex engines and generators burning like 1,000 coal fires and cities that were 100 feet tall. This is how you get a little bit of steampunk flavor in your world, such as the Clockwork folks, which of course are my favorite. But this place is also filled with some really nasty threats, and not just banditos. You have the creepy legend-style monsters, such as the Kentucky Sawbones and Arizona Tenor, and then you have the monsters that seem like they came right out of a horror movie called the Blood Oilers. Some of the monsters of this world are inspired by real-world cryptids and folklore, or just completely made up like the Blood Oilers, complete with their very own and very interesting lore. And honestly, I'd love to spend most of this video diving into all that because it's all very fascinating stuff and technically my area of expertise, but I acknowledge the video needs to focus more on mechanics and how it actually plays. Plus, it's probably more fun for you to discover anyway as you read it on your own and play. But before we move on, I will say that the world you play in was very well crafted with a lot of love and care and a heck ton of research. And for that, it gets the Squirrel stamp of approval. Okay, so here's the meat and potatoes of the meal. What makes this game any different from everything else? Is it just another reskin of 5e? Is it a rule so light you have to make everything up because the dev is lazy? That's my game. Or has something new been brought to the table? If you talked with Peter for more than 5 minutes, you'll have probably heard him talk about his wound system. And to be fair, while the game does bring a lot of neat things, the wound system is the bread and butter and what will really shake up the way you play the game. There is no HP or strikes in this game. To hit someone, or something, you roll a d10 plus a related skill. It's also worth noting that this is the extent of the math. You just add one thing to your roll, and that's it. There are no proficiency and magic bonuses to add on top of your skills or anything silly like that. And yes, there is essentially advantage and disadvantage where you roll 2 dice and pick the highest or lowest depending on what you had, and they do not stack. Now, assuming you hit your target, you now have to roll the wound dice. These will vary depending on what type of weapon you use. For the character I played in both sessions, which was a bit of a gunslinger, I got to roll 4d8. When you roll the wound dice, you pick the lowest value, with a 1 being a critical injury. Injuries can simply just be a strain, which is barely anything to worry about, or serious, critical, and lethal. You only get to have a couple serious injuries before being forced into the next category, which is either critical or lethal. It's also worth noting that injuries don't just magically go away after combat or by swigging a potion. You have to get them properly tended to, and until you do, they will have a negative effect on your performance. The other part of this injury and combat system is the ability to target different areas. Bulk is pretty self-explanatory, meaning it is the bulk of one's body. Brim refers to the limbs, and ace refers to the head, and as you can see here, aiming at the brim or ace area does increase the rank, which means it's harder to hit. In this game, difficulties are in ranks with set values. When aiming for the ace adds +2, that doesn't mean it's +2 to the difficulty value or number. It means that is now 2 whole ranks higher. So if we look at the table here and say shooting a bandit was, novice task, which means a difficulty of 6, and we decide to shoot for the head, we're now jumping up 2 ranks to master, which is a difficulty of 10, which is both very cool and kind of a booger at the same time. It's a very solid structure and honestly an interesting way of keeping things balanced, and I like it. But on the other hand, if you asked me what was higher, Master, Extraordinary, and Human, Legendary, or Mythical, I would have no idea what to tell you. There are absolutely some games out there that would put Master at the very top, but here it's just kind of in the middle. So it's just a little something extra to remember, but thankfully it all fits nicely here on this tiny little table for easy reference. Cover is also important, as you can probably imagine with all the shooting going on.
Go ahead, but throw it harder this time.
There you go again. You never can satisfy you. Throw.
Thankfully, it's pretty simple. If your target has some kind of cover, the challenge rank of hitting and doing damage to them is increased by 1. If they're completely behind cover, well, then you just can't hit them. But also, if your visibility is somewhat reduced, it works the same way by raising the difficulty by 1. On the other hand, if your visibility is completely ruined somehow, you can do what is called a shot in the dark, which is rolling your shot with disadvantage and then striking a random location on the target. And I feel like that's probably what stands out the most to make this game unique.
Hey, you! How do you like them apples?
You still have things like weapon ranges, weapon types, status conditions, skills such as athletics, bravado, brawling, dexterity, and stats like awareness, sneakiness, grit, and vigor. And on that note, though, you do have stats for reactions to try and avoid incoming damage, which is pretty nice considering how deadly the wound system is. Each turn in combat, you get 2 actions and 2 reactions, so 2 chances to avoid damage before it comes your turn again. You also have edges, which are special abilities or perks for your character. And this is where I gotta pick on Peter just a little bit. Peter, I love you, man, but these names, you can't see it, but I'm shaking my head. Quick Draw lets you reload twice as fast. Not exactly what I would take Quick Draw to mean, but I could almost see an argument for it. Maybe. Fan the Hammer, on the other hand, man, come on, man. This is Fan the Hammer. Okay, so technically Fan the Hammer doesn't mean emptying your entire gun, but still, I feel like it's implied. Fan the Hammer in TFE is just letting you get an extra shot in, and I'll argue that it should have been called Quick Shot or something. That boy just as useless as tits on a boar hog, I tell you what. But my point is, outside the wound system and arguably the reactions to avoid damage, it's pretty normal stuff. Nothing gets too complicated and things are kept fairly simple across the board for ease of play, but enough moving parts to make some fun and interesting characters. Which, by the way, to do so, all you have to do is pick a profession, a culture, an incident, and then you get to pick your skills and edges from lists based off your previous choices. Also, before I forget, the game does have the meta currency luck, and 1 point of luck will let you re-roll any roll in the game. You can also use a luck point to change the narrative of a scene at the GM's discretion. You can gain more luck points either by receiving a lethal injury or consuming both your actions on your turn to roleplay your injuries, your conditions, or part of your backstory. And lastly, well, not lastly, because obviously there's still a ton of other stuff to this game that I don't have time to cover, but the last one I'll make note of is the rule of cruel. This game suggests that whenever you're not sure how something should go rule-wise, you should pick the option that's the most destructive for everyone involved. Because why not? Okay, so that's all well and good, right? The world is cool and that wound system sounds pretty dang neat, but how does it all actually play out? I've played the game twice at this point, though funnily enough, I think I've played in the TFE Clockworld setting using nuts more, but that's beside the point. I played it once several months ago on Avenue Studios, and then just recently for the sake of this video and to give me a refresher, we played it over on Peter's channel. I played Mudo the Clockwork Lawman both times, and yes, both times I had fun. But let me try to give you some metrics to go by here. Excuse me. The game over on Peter's channel was just a smidgen under 3 hours. During that 3 hours, I only took 2 turns in combat, which sounds pretty darn terrible, right? But around here in these parts, we like this little thing called context. See, we were all exploring a spooky manor of sorts, and we were all playing very, very cautiously, and dare I say it, maybe even slightly intelligent. Our tinkerer built a barricade on one door that completely walled off a wave of zombies before they even had a chance to try and get to us. Crisis number 1 averted. Then later, when we were fighting a different horde of zombies, I got to do what my character does best. And since we were trying to be quiet, I used a luck point to say I had a can of beans to use as a suppressor.
God, get beaned.
Yeah, beans. Get beaned.
Get beaned.
I was rolling pretty hot that night, so the first shot was right in the head and 1 zombie goes down. Second shot was from my quick shot edge, definitely not fan the hammer, and it landed in the second zombie's head. 2 zombies down. Since I get 2 actions, I fired off a 3rd round. Another headshot, another zombie down. 3 zombies in 1 turn, so you can see just how fast this goes. Crisis number 2 averted. Take note though, 1 little zombie bite can cause an awful lot of problems too, so it's not just us getting to be super strong. Now, fast forward a few minutes later and we found ourselves in a bit of a pickle. A particularly high difficulty gunslinger had some of the crew at gunpoint, but he didn't realize that I'm just around the corner and out of sight. Since I just used a can of beans, naturally I went for the cornbread.
So Mudo, is it time to shoot?
What if I had cornbread in my pocket?
I think
Cookie
not.
hit you up.
If only you had 1 more luck.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, you can't have beans without cornbread, so.
I agree with
I
that
mean,
statement.
Naturally,
I
it
agree.
would be there.
I agree.
Yeah.
Here's how this will work. I do have the cornbread. It's just useless.
I love it. It just splatters everywhere. You just waste the
He
cornbread.
does try it.
That's great.
It's just
Couple well-placed shots, and crisis number 3 averted. My point is, we were intentionally playing slow, but when action time came, things happened very fast because each move is so deadly for both players and enemies. There was also lots of things happening outside of combat, such as barricading the door mentioned earlier, setting up some dynamite to deal with an oncoming horde,
I brought some dynamite.
and generally just trying to figure out how not to get ourselves killed. It wasn't time spent looking up rules and charts and tables. So feel free to go watch the session in full because it was a pretty darn good time with a lot of other YouTubers. All in all, I'd say it's a pretty darn fun game. Funnily enough, I'm fairly certain it's something that I probably wouldn't have picked up on my own to try, but I'm very glad I got to experience it and would definitely play it some more. The wound system keeps it intense and interesting, and the rest of the supporting rules are pretty easily digestible, making it fairly easy to pick up and play, as well as GM. As a matter of fact, I feel like most players that have played this learned just by playing and pretty much had it figured out after a couple turns. It does have some crunch, but it has well-designed crunch, which makes it easy to grasp and move forward with. Now, like I mentioned before, the Kickstarter will be going live in just a few days, so if this looks to be something you'll enjoy, make sure you sign up for a reminder as well as back it when the time comes, if you're in a position to do so. The link down below will take you to the sign up as well as the page itself once it goes live. And if you're still unsure about it, then I have fantastic news. Peter's channel goes more in depth on various points of his game, such as the wound mechanics, making a character, and even some of the lore. Shoot, I even have another video talking about using fear as a narrative tool, and I use our first session together as an example. So there is no shortage of information out there about this game before you make your purchase. That said, I think the Kickstarter is going to do very, very well, and Peter is going to find a lot of success with this. Rumor has it there's plans for more settings in the future with this rule set, so here's hoping. So Peter, best of luck to you on the campaign. And as for the rest of you, go check out the Kickstarter and get yourself some cornbread.